Okay, so we were told specifically we have a time limit, so I'm going to talk like this very, very fast. But we'll do justice to the research, but we want to definitely leave room for your questions. And I'm here joined by Zhang, and she's an incredible data scientist. So a little bit of background about myself, and then I'll turn it over to you, Sam, to share a little bit about your professional background. My name is Idil. I have been a researcher for over 25 years. No, it's not 15 plus, it's not 20 plus, it's more than 25 plus. And I love my craft, and I think, and currently I lead my own company. For the last year and a half, I've been doing my own company and doing research on topics that my clients and I care about. So today's topic is near and dear to my heart because it focuses on this emerging technology and also gender issues. Sam, you want to say a little bit about your background?
Sure. My name is Sam. Currently, I'm a senior data scientist at the Advertising Research Foundation, which is a nonprofit research organization. Before that, I was in tech and media, also as a data scientist. And yeah, I'm really excited and honored to be here with you all today.
We couldn't have pulled this study off without Sam, so she's being very modest. There are two other folks who were part of this research, Dr. Tracy Adams and Dr. Keith Smith, who are with the Advertising Research Foundation and Marketing Science Institute. So here's a topic. Do women get the same AI? And what does that mean if it's a no? What does that mean in terms of having our own agency in this AI-wrapped era? So let's move one more slide. AI doesn't just answer our questions, right? It reads how we speak. And how many of you think men and women choose their words differently? Like they have a different language though. You're correct. Generally speaking, of course, like if you feel like that doesn't apply to me, but that might be fair. But generally speaking, our languages are affected by the way we're socialized. And if there's a difference between the way men and women are socialized, they might choose different speech patterns. And also maybe we're wired differently. But assuming that our languages, the way we use language are different, and the way our language cues transmit themselves to that conversation with AI shapes the answers we get. And that's the whole point of this research. We had a question about whether gender cues in feminine or masculine language, so I'll speak for myself, English is my second language. When I speak English, I think I have a more masculine style, because to me it's utilitarian. I don't emote in English. My first language is Turkish, and I sound completely different when I speak my native tongue. So maybe some of you who are bilingual or multilingual can attest to that as well. So when we say feminine and masculine language, it doesn't have to necessarily come from a man or a woman, respectively. You can have different styles irrespective of your gender. And because AI-driven insights guide our choices and plans, if gender cues shape the information that we're given by AI, it has tremendous implications. So if women are getting different types of information than men, and vice versa, just because of the nature in which they speak, then we have a problem that we should at least be aware of. So let's go one more. So when we talk about linguistic patterns, women are and men's patterns are going to be evaluated in terms of collaborative cues, declarative cues, and contextual. And there are quite a few others. Sam, what were they?
I think we're going to show them in a couple slides. Yeah.
Okay, and then over to you, because you know that whole range of criteria for which we tested. Let's go one more slide. So these are the kinds of prompts that we gave to AI in this experiment. So we did an experimental study where we gave a range of feminine and masculine prompts to OpenAI. So is it super representative? you might have some questions about it. So it's experimental, and we only worked with OpenAI. But by way of example, this is a feminine prompt, and the one on the left-hand side is 0% feminine on that scale of femininity. And by way of, I guess, example and exaggeration, just so we can see the difference and feel the difference, the one on the right-hand side is what we would coin as 100% feminine. 0% feminine just gives the list, cut and dry. 100% feminine is almost apologizing and introducing, and could we maybe, if it's not too much trouble. I mean, I don't think any one of us would do all of that in one shot, but maybe. But just so you get the idea and of what femininity and masculinity in language represented in the study.
Yeah, so like Idil mentioned, these are examples. So we examined, rather than a binary, we examined a spectrum from 0 to 100%. So this is like examples of the dial turn all the way down and then all the way up. So maybe not as reflective as the way that you or I speak. I feel like most of us are somewhere in the middle here. But you'll notice that both of these prompts are asking for the exact same thing. They're asking for a 5-item shopping list for a friend's birthday, but they're doing so obviously with very different linguistic traits. So we can dive a little deeper into our methodology here if we go to the next slide. So we're not necessarily saying that, gender stereotypes are like hard-coded into these AI models, or even that your ChatGPT is directly making an assumption about your gender when you're using it. We're more so saying that AI is a mirror, and it reflects back to us the same, themes and language that we use in our own prompting. And so, of course, that can have big implications because it can affect the outcome and what we receive from these AI models. And so we designed this experiment to basically better understand what those differences might look like. All right, so this study was conducted, like Idil mentioned, by the Advertising Research Foundation, the Marketing Science Institute, and Iris Flex. It was a 2-phase study. So the first phase focused entirely on how we're actually generating these prompts with so-called gendered language, and what our approach would look like to do that. And then the second phase, we plugged those prompts into ChatGPT and examined what the differences in outcomes would look like. We can go to the next slide. So, of course, we wanted to test the impact that gendered language can have on the outputs that we receive from our LLMs. And so we tried to use a situation that we hope is pretty ubiquitous, which is shopping for a friend's birthday present. So like I mentioned, all of our prompts were asking for the exact same thing for a 5-item list of gift recommendations for a friend. None of the prompts specified the gender of that friend or any of the preferences of that friend. And then these 5, if we could go back really quickly, these 5 spectrums are the ones that Idil mentioned earlier, on which we based our gendered prompting cues. And so these are all based on linguistic and sociological research. Communal versus agentic orientation, so whether we're using community-focused language or more individualistic, goal-oriented language. Indirect versus direct. I think Mai just mentioned earlier, how maybe women tend to be a little bit less concise, use less of those declarative, imperative words. Hedging versus non-hedging, so using words like maybe, could, should, I think. Polite versus impolite, so using, please and thank you. And then emotionally expressive versus non-expressive is surrounding how we are managing the emotions of the other person. So, whether or not we're using caring, warm language. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So our methodological approach, like I mentioned, we created these prompts using AI and systematically varied them along those 5 spectrums that we just talked about, using a sample size of 120. And then, of course, we don't want to simply just use AI-generated prompts, so we also had human subjects who wrote prompts. They were all given the exact same directive. And then we made sure that our trends were observed in both these human prompts and AI written prompts. And then we plugged them into ChatGPT 5. And then we did a variety of analyses on the outputs. So we had 2 human coders who looked at whether pricing information was given, and then categorized all of the recommended gift items into about 10 categories. So, beauty and personal care, electronics, books, etc. We used a linguistic software called LIWC to actually analyze the linguistic features of the ChatGPT's responses. And then we also did topic modeling on the data set, so looking at clusters of different words and how they appear together and whether that's associated with gender or not.
So it was both a comparison of gender and also human versus AI generated content. And then when you guys were coding with Tracy, you guys made sure you synced up in the way that you code. So there was a lot of statistics and a lot of safety nets that were built as we analyzed the data. I know we're short for time today and we didn't go too deep into that, but rest assured that they did everything that was scientifically proved and solid in the back end. So here are the findings. Women's cues trigger narrower and more cautious outputs. Okay, and I'm seeing some bunch of heads like saying, I knew that. Well, because maybe we experienced this, right? AI responses to women's phrasings often omitted pricing information, and women hold the purse, right? Women make majority of the household purchase decisions. There are many women here who make business purchase decisions, so this is a huge mishap. Women's phrasing often, not always, but often yielded, these are the major trends, domestic and emotional framing, emphasizing comfort and affect. Like they would get cozy and blanket and brown blanket in the response, and reduced technical language. Whereas men's or masculine prompts would get durable, sturdy, pricing information, technical details, and more supportive than strategic answers. You want to elaborate on that, what we mean by supportive versus strategic? So
I think just the fact that not only the outcomes were different, but the way that those outcomes were framed was different. Mm-hmm. So, whereas the female prompts elicited more like expressive framing, like focused on emotional and experiences, the men's outcomes focused more on technical specifications. Mm-hmm. Which, right. Yeah, we'll show in a little bit too.
Exactly. And then domains, this is where I think it gets interesting from a knowledge perspective and also information organization and simply what choices are available to you in the marketplace or in social circles. Women's prompts or feminine prompts yielded much narrow domains in terms of product recommendations, in terms of categories. So say you're looking for a birthday list, and AI system reads into your language and determines you're female. You will get constantly home and beauty, whereas men will get more choices, but also skewed to stereotypes about masculinity, more mechanical things you have to put together, things that work with batteries. So maybe men would not appreciate that either. But you see, when we are talking about today, especially, I don't know how many of you work with AI and marketing types of issues, if you're getting limited information, if your brand is not visible, or if your brand is trying to be visible in an AI setting, the whole thing is complicated by biases as such. So while you're striving to be, in command of the AI interaction, make your brand visible in AI settings, or have your employees embrace AI. This bias and this bifurcation makes things a lot more complicated. Okay, let's go one more. Here's what we mean by the bifurcation. Men's cues triggered more expansive and strategic outputs, and this is what we were elaborating on earlier: durability, function, technical recommendations, and then they got books, media, toys, games, and travel. Travel, I mean, how many of you organize travel for your families? Come on, AI. Okay, so obviously there is a split, and what do we do about this is the big question. Let's go one more.
This is showing again that difference in framing that Idil was mentioning earlier. So the x-axis here is increasing femininity from 0 to 100%. The purple line is uses of the word cozy, and then the teal line is uses of the word durable. So you see like steadily increasing as femininity increases for words like cozy, and I think luxury was another one that was increasing, and then decreasing uses of the word durable.
Pretty stark difference. So should I start with the implications? Yeah, let's go one more. Both prompt and AI generated content reflect this gender bias. And it really, the difference comes into the way that we interact with AI. So there's several layers of bias. We're all socialized in one way or another, so we bring our own personal biases, maybe gender-driven biases, to our AI interactions, plus the data that we meet and the information that's available in AI systems is also not even, and it's not evenly distributed. So anyone using feminine traits, it could be someone who identifies as male as well, will get how-to responses as opposed to how to advance responses. Much more conservative financial guidance. Lo and behold, you'll look up something about stock market or how to invest. You're gonna get narrower choices if the AI system determines, for one reason or another, you are using feminine language. A lot more emotional cues will be woven into health recommendations that are given to you. Women are always stressed, right? Caution instead of agency, and that's where that's one thing that we wanted to underscore as an implication of this study. A lot more cautious language as opposed to giving the power and control to the feminine inquirer. And the implication of that is that you don't feel informed and armed. You feel you're treated like the majority of society might treat you, and AI doesn't give you as much of an edge as you hoped, and you're relying more on yourself to determine that. Let's go one more. And in terms of organizations and marketplaces, think of it as think of it at the scale of teams that are experiencing this. They're getting unequal enablement based on the knowledge flows that emerge. Product decisions, product development decisions, strategic direction also run in uneven ways. It could be for your personal list, like we're exemplifying here, but it could be, we're all using AI more or less for work as well. So if you're working on your project and you're using feminine cues just because that's the way you use language, you're gonna be directed differently than your male colleagues. And the brand trust becomes an issue here, and trust fundamentally becomes an issue here because the interactions feels less than accurate. So the receiver is also becoming more and more aware of some of the trends in the responses that they're getting. Why am I seeing L'Oreal for the third time? I'm giving a crude example. Or why am I constantly being told I should buy a blanket? Or where's the price information? And it takes a step back. There is heightened awareness about how AI is biased and not to be trusted, even among the general public, beyond the circle of educated professional circles like we're in right now. So a lot of that erodes trust, and that raises a question about the future of this technology, and also organizations going into that space. You're entering a zone that's not very trusted, and that's kind of on shaky ground in terms of information quality. And then the talent development gaps widen even further. So imagine a workplace where there's already a bit of a divide because of society, separating the lanes, people choosing different career tracks, women not being given the opportunities they deserve for one reason or another. Imagine that overlaid by the AI system where people are getting different information and the system is reacting to them in different pathways. So that's increasing the divide potentially if we're not aware of it and we don't take controls of it. Anything you want to add here? Okay. So what would leaders need to do? And I want to open the conversation to our discussion after Sam shares some of her input as well. We have to audit the outputs and almost be skeptical in what we're receiving. if we're coaching teams about AI adoption, about leading with AI-derived information, we have to be cognizant of these differences. And I would lean more on technical staff to fine-tune the data, fine-tune the systems that are giving this information. There's a lot to be said about bias checks and responsible AI use here. And the shift has to be from this persona-based response system to a needs-based system. Anybody can need a birthday list, as opposed to a female user or a masculine user. Build AI experiences that give users an AI agency. So I think we have to be extra cautious when we're training teams. We had shared previously that women feel a little bit more cautious about entering the AI zone. Again, outside of this room, speaking generally. So if there's already hesitancy and skepticism about what this platform can do for you, plus it's giving you skewed information and you become aware of it, are you going to keep using it? Maybe not. Or maybe you won't embrace it as much, and it's going to put you even further back in the room. So building experiences with an eye towards agency and enablement, and then training teams on prompt patterns. What would you say about that? Because you created much of those prompts and you worked through those.
I think just, being scrutinizing of our own prompting language, which I guess, is something that I personally need to implement more too. But I think, we're all being, as we've heard today, encouraged to use AI in our places of work. And so, as AI is becoming more and more ubiquitous, I think, being extra scrutinizing of what that output looks like and how we are personally shaping what that output looks like as well. And I think, once you start to use it every day, it's hard to constantly hold yourself accountable in that way, but trying to keep that top of mind.
Exactly. All right. And I think that's pretty much it. Let's open the room for discussion. Go ahead.
Fantastic stuff and terrifying. Two quick questions. One, is how much of this is because the AI design teams are not gender balanced? I know you weren't looking at that, but do you have hypotheses on that?
I mean, I think it introduces added skew. Because there is separate research, and if you look into it in your own time, you'll see the difference in outputs that are generated by diverse teams versus...
Yes. That's where I'm getting.
Yeah, less than diverse teams. There's actually research on that.
Yeah.
And also there's a difference in the way that content is received by members of diverse communities versus members of less than diverse communities. So if you are diverse and coming from, let's say you're not white and the system is built for white male language, you'll sense that you're left out, and that has both a social and a psychological implication. So you're right to touch on that.
I think there was a study by Stanford done last year which showed that across dozens of countries, the AI skills gap in terms of the actual AI workforce, huge gender gap, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a cautionary. And I'm fascinated by the downstream implications that you are.
Right.
The second question was around kind of, the implications for women leading inside companies, right? Like, if we're getting different outputs, what does that mean? Is that something you guys are going to look into?
I mean, that's the open-ended question that
Yeah.
I think would be a fantastic way to follow up on this, to see if people are actually experiencing that. Or I would be more curious about, I'm sure they're aware of it, how they're circumventing the issue, how they're creating the balance, how they're putting the guardrails in place so that their teams feel included. Right, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's a question and a comment, right? Is there an opportunity? So I have like a kind of a question and a comment. One thing that I've done is sometimes I will ask AI if I'm doing like very high profile thing, how's my voice sounding? Does it come across as X, Y, and Z? What do I need to change? And over time, training it on what my authentic voice is. So the final check I always do is this in my authentic voice? Because I'll go through like a few rounds of audits and changes, and then before you know, it's like, did I change too much? So is there an opportunity for women, because of what you've highlighted, is that they can get in the habit of checking themselves and then training our own ways of how we're prompting. Do you think
I would
that's an
say yes.
effective-
And if you just gave me an idea, because if I were creating a training program, I would make the attendees aware of that option. Anecdotally speaking, I've had many conversations where people didn't know that they could train AI in their own voice, and they were only copying and pasting email and making the grammar better. But yeah, so I think that's a wise idea. Go ahead, and then you need to.
Hi, first of all, oh, you turned it off. So making it harder, thank you. There it goes, yeah. Hi, everyone, Jyoti Menon. Question for you. I wonder how bad it is if AI gets more of a feminine voice. Because if we look at our future and our authentic selves, we are feminine and have a way of working and being collaborative and, you know, all those great leadership words. I just wonder if this starts to break the art and science of it, because to your point at work, sure, I don't want to be like, would you give me help on X, Y, or Z? We all do it, right? Like, I was just writing to follow up. But the flip side is there is something about relationship building and working that way, and that's often why women are really successful at what they do. So I don't know if I have a question, but more of a comment for all of us to consider, like, where are those moments to be more specific, but where are the right moments to be more authentic?
Right. There is a difference, which we didn't touch into here. Sam, maybe you want to elaborate. There is a difference in the way AI responds to you if it knows whether you're male or female, or whether it reads into your language, right? That was also part of the study.
Right. We looked into both explicit and implicit framing. So those like gender language spectrums that we mentioned were implicit, and then we also looked into a condition where we just asked AI, can you write this in the voice of 50% feminine, 50% masculine, for example. And, you know, there were small differences there. But I think, you know, you raise a good point. I think in my personal experience, like, I talk to my LLM very differently than the way that I correspond via email with real people or with my friends or, you know, whatever it might be. And of course, the onus is not completely on us as users to try and mitigate this issue. You know, it's on, you know, the AI teams and the companies to try and, you know, look for a more even output. But I think, you know, being aware when we talk to an LLM too, that it's like not a real person. And so maybe we can, you know, use a little bit more resolute language or be a little bit more direct with it as well.
Yeah, but I think to your point, we don't have to be more masculine in our language to win the AI race. That's not the point. The point is to be aware that you might be getting skewed information and continuing to prompt to get the information that you want.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are moments where we might want the more emotional
today's
framing from AI as well. Like, that's not always, you know, the worst outcome.
Right. Like, I want the luxury item.
Yeah. I want to be cozy.
Yeah, that's not bad. Nita.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add just to, I think, Pooja, you mentioned it. I think there is an element of us all training AI. I always say to it, right, it's got to know me when I've put in sort of drafts, right? I need it to remain in my voice. So if I'm asking it to prove or polish up an email, I'll always say in my voice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to know me, right? In a way, I mean, yes, I mean, yeah. Obviously, there's a level of due diligence to make sure it's not giving me garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But training your AI partner I'm calling it, is, you know, I think we've got to keep, it's more about embedding AI in the loop, right? So I think that element of training is really foundational, right, to eliminate some of these biases and, like you say, awareness.
And I wonder if that might help close the trust gap in what you receive. So once you start recognizing that it is speaking your language, and it is thinking the way you would think, that authenticity issue maybe becomes more, it moves back to the background, still there, but maybe you trust it more. Yeah, I mean, TBD, more research is needed.
So this is fascinating. So coming from a vantage point, having been working on creating AI policy as well as implementation in banking, and I guess specific to banking sector, female, male, it doesn't matter. We've been trained to be more fact-based not putting emotion into the language at work. And so as we've been training the AI models the past 3-4 years, we actually did not look at this, because you're not meant to be so emotional at work and use, fluffy language, whatever that we think is a stereotype as a female. So we did not deal with it, and listening to you, I'm not sure if that was the right way to go, but that's how it's been going at the banks that I've been working at. So I guess the question is, when you did the training and the input, not even the training, when you did the input, were the female kind of input, let's call it, from different industries? Was there an industry layer? Because I look at my sister, who's a fashion designer, and we talk completely, extremely different when we ask questions and when we answer questions. So I just wonder if there's an industry overlay, because not all women are the same.
Right, absolutely. No, we didn't do an industry overlay. Our prompt was about birthday gifts, so we tried to keep it like in the personal life realm, but that absolutely is a great point. And I mean, even our 5 scientifically based language indicators are of course not encompassing at all of, the female experience and the female, the ways that females use language in general. And, also I think people interact with LLMs differently than the way that they speak verbally or they send emails. And so that's also something that we thought about, and there just wasn't enough existing research out there on the differences linguistically between when we use LLMs and when we communicate in other ways, for us to do something really definitive about that. But I'm sure it's coming. But that's a great point, and I think would be a great extension.
I think it would be fascinating. And then I'm sure there's a difference between a data pool, but you would know better, that's enterprise versus this just open AI, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is a little technical, but also I want to kind of peel something that's deeper afterwards. Do you find any significant difference between the AI-generated prompt versus the human one in your research?
Yeah, there were small differences in the outcome. For the most part, these trends that we reported on were similar. The prompts looked different, of course. Like humans are, a lot when they know, because they knew that they were instructing an LLM, so they were much less verbose than like that huge paragraph that you saw that the AI had written. But I think, for men, the AI prompts tended to recommend them more like games, books and media, and I think for humans it tended to recommend them more games and travel. And so it was like similar findings across both the humans and the AI written prompts, despite the fact that the prompts themselves looked different. Like you couldn't necessarily identify that, like hedging versus non-hedging, communal versus agentic, etc.
Okay, that's great. So this is actually interesting because I want to see which layer does the problem, quote unquote problem or issue, reside, right? If it's the prompting side, it's on us. But if the model itself,
both. It's the interaction. That was the big aha. It's the way you interact. You talk the way you talk.
Right.
But when that comes to on top of that, to a biased data set or a biased tool, then what happens? So the interaction provides the output.
Right. So both sides will have to change.
Yeah, you have to be cognizant of both.
Yeah, I don't think the responsibility should be completely on us as users to like fix this problem, because I think absolutely it's trained on the entire corpus of human data and it's inherently biased data, of course.
Right.
So
I'm so sorry, we're a little bit, we're available after the presentation for your questions. Obviously, it triggers a lot more thought, even for us presenters. I want to thank you for your attention and time, and I want to pass the mic to Maria for closing remarks.